Welcome back for a very special edition of the Rad Life, where we're going to recap what happened, see if we can make some sense of it. We're trying to work out some bugs here, some kinks, so hopefully you're tuning in. See if we've got it live going the way it's supposed to go here. Looks like it. Let's see if we've got our Raad Ghantous and our resident who's going to explain it all to me, Raad Ghantous.
Hey, Paul. Can you hear me?
I can. I think we're live. We'll have to go check it out on the thing here. I think we're streaming live on LinkedIn and YouTube and stuff here.
Well, Facebook better make sure that you go back in there and clean that up, because I think while you were dealing with some technical difficulties, you may have been broadcasting on Facebook.
Okay.
And
I'll go
probably go ahead and take care. You should probably go ahead and take care of that now.
I will do that while you're talking. But today,
Right.
It's no secret.
Well,
no secret that I was a forever and never Trumper, and I'm stunned that he's back.
yeah, well, I mean, again, the purpose of why I wanted to do this show on a reflection on the election was not so much the national election, but more like the people that we actually interviewed for the for local seats.
Yeah.
In Orange County, and what we learned from actually doing that. And I think some of it actually would apply if you really want to look at it on a national level, because the thing that became very apparent when we talked to people, and again, for people that had a chance to look at the episodes or join us while we were doing it, we did 18 interviews with 18 candidates across Orange County.
Yeah, impressive.
For all intents reasons, for all purposes, 30 days maybe at best, right?
Right.
And we had people that were representing interests at the school board. We had people that were running for city council. We were running for people who were running for re-election to seats, and what have you. And we even had some people that were running for assembly. So the thing that I learned that was paramount, I think, was that it's unavoidable. We all know that there is some serious difference of opinion and division, if you will, on certain key topics, and whether it's national politics or local politics, to varying degrees, that seems to translate into our political cycles. When you bring people in and you sit down and talk to them one-on-one, you also realize that there's a lot of things that everybody, regardless which side of the aisle they may be on, although technically a lot of the seats that we did interview people for were supposed to be nonpartisan, although we all know that it's almost unavoidable these days, the tribalism of things. But even with that being said, even if they basically represent different mindsets, it became very clear very quickly that the issues that everybody's dealing with individually, there's a lot of overlap. And I'm going to bring it back to local versus national, but everybody who was running that had any input on like affordable housing or the housing crisis, or dealing with traffic, or dealing with affordability of housing, right? Because we happen to be fortunate enough to live in a very affluent kind of real estate market area. But everybody, regardless of which side of the quote unquote aisle they represented, everybody was facing the same issues. Now, they may have different ways of dealing with them, or ways that they want to ideologically pursue solutions, but everybody was facing the same stuff. And once you got past the initial conversation, especially with people that are running for re-election and have had some time on the ground, so that they're not just first timers into their, executing their job, getting stuff done, everybody's motivation was into finding solutions. Some people's motivations were more finding quick fixes, And a lot of the people that were more seasoned understood that we needed more sustainable solutions. We needed more creative solutions that were basically something that we wouldn't have to revisit every 2 or 4 years, every general election or every midterm election. And they also realized that they needed to not be operating in their silos. And that was the other thing that was a revelation for me in interviewing these people, especially ones that have been at it for a while. They realized that just because they may represent a particular city, the solutions they needed were more regional in nature, and that they needed to reach out beyond their city boundaries, across the quote unquote aisle, across the boundaries of their own fiefdom, because they needed to work out solutions with other people in neighboring cities. Otherwise, every single city will have to come up with its own solutions about affordable housing, of cost of living, homeless issues, and it's obviously hasn't worked. That approach has not worked. If anything, all it has led is to a top-down heavy-handedness from the state to try to dictate to what happens with the cities individually. Like every city has to assign a certain area for, they don't have to build one, but they have to assign and dedicate an area for a homeless shelter, for example, right? Or they have to meet a certain number of housing units that are affordable in nature. And again, affordability as a term is a little misleading, because what is considered affordable in LA County doesn't necessarily mean the same dollars and sign numbers that it is in Orange County or in Riverside County, or even to say Central Valley of California. So it's when we get caught up on these little terminologies, which was the other thing I recognized from talking to people, is we get hung up on terms. And we live in a world that is basically very much driven by sound bites and not really looking at details, looking beyond just the label, right? So the minute you say affordable housing, everybody just basically says, absolutely not in my backyard, right? And yet we have the reality of dealing with a cost of housing issue. So you could say not in my backyard all day long, but it's not going to really solve the situation. It's not even going to provide a way to handle the situation, let alone solve it, right? Let alone it being a long-term solution. So maybe we need to stop getting hung up on the term affordable housing, for example, and start talking about proximity housing. Talk about walkable communities.
Well,
talk about
words
the way that
words carry weight. Like and I'll say this. Maybe this is a harsh statement, but I think Republicans, even more Democrats, understand the power of words and what you call it. Years ago when they tried to get rid of the estate tax, they called it the death tax. Well, nobody wants a death tax, but how about an estate tax? Well, that doesn't
now,
sound
Paul,
so bad.
I disagree with you. I think both quote unquote parties, both stakeholders, use that stuff to their advantage.
Well,
I think labels are a nature of how people are busy. People have, jobs and mortgages and worried about where their home insurance is going to come from, because people are leaving the state. And you can't even say that insurance in the states of, in the state of California, there's insurance companies that are leaving. You also have the same problem with insurance in the state of Florida.
Yeah,
right.
because of natural disasters.
It's not a red state, blue state thing. We have an issue with home insurance. Anybody who's a homeowner is having an issue securing home insurance.
But not one person talked about that. Not on a state, a federal, or a local level. Not one person talked about that.
Which goes back to my point, Paul. Both parties are guilty of basically not having holistic conversations about issues where they're basically providing solutions. And this is where I wanted to get to. Okay, talking to the people we talk to, and talking to them one-on-one, and having the ability to talk to them for an hour at a time, versus putting them in a forum where basically this is the first point of contact for voters. They see people in a forum if they physically go there, or they see it in a paper, okay, for the whatever, or online, and they're basically soundbite questions. Here's a question, give me 60 seconds of an answer. Okay, well, I can't even do 60 seconds. I need to do 30 seconds because that'll be Instagram friendly.
And the answer has already been scripted by their party and the people who put out the message for that. It's so they're just parroting what each, and I'll say both sides, they're just parroting what's already been decided. Here's what I find disappointing and fearful about from a local standpoint. We talked about one of the things I saw is the nationalization of local politics, where we should be talking about potholes and we should be talking about affordable housing. We're talking about transgender, and we're talking about
How's that any different from basically supporting a particular sports team or another?
it's not.
I
But
mean,
that
you're
but
wearing it on you're wearing it on your chest right now. Okay.
absolutely. But my point is that we used to be able to talk at a local level and get stuff done, even if we disagreed and came from different teams. I don't think, despite what a lot of people said, we got to think regionally, we got to think beyond our city, we got to think. I don't think that's going to happen now. I think you're going to go back into, and you're going to see some cities. We already know some of them that are going to pick up the national culture war and cram it down our throats on a local level.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about tribalism. Okay, that is interesting. First of all, I think we are dealing with a generational situation too, where people don't remember. And I think I've said this to you, and I've said it to you multiple times. I am a firm believer in the human nature, and human nature basically does not remember. Okay, the reason why on occasion we will have a outburst of violence in the Middle East, because we have the Lebanese basically situation internally implode, because we have a situation where we have an authoritarian government in South America. You know, the problem with tribalism, the problem with human nature is, and I don't think it's fixable. Honestly, I mean, you know, the higher self and all this stuff, and
Better
you know,
angels.
elevated stuff, bullshit. Honestly, I mean, let's call it like it is, right? Human beings, to a certain level of DNA, are still primal, and the primal nature of human beings means that every few generations have to relearn the lessons of the generation before. And I'll give you a perfect example. Did it really matter how many times your parents said to you, no, that's not a good idea? No, because you still went and had to learn the lesson yourself. So we're having a whole nation having to learn lessons again. And honestly, tribalism and siloed thinking, augmented, you know, or reinforced by algorithms that basically continue to feed you the same stuff that you basically say you like, so that doesn't basically open your mind to basically being exposed to other things, for example. Sure, go ahead and do that. But that means if everybody does that, if everybody acts that selfishly, right? You have nothing to complain about when somebody's not there for you. When somebody says to you, well, that's great, but what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for me? Why would I do something if the only motivation I have is self-interest? And if everybody's going to operate on that same level, well, great, then we are going to end up with what we're going to end up with.
Like the 80s, greed is good. I'll tell you what's disappointing to me is, and every so often, that this country, and whether it's an ideal or a fact, we are mixed tribes. We aren't one tribe. We are multiple tribes pushed together, occupying the same space.
Not as much as you think anymore, because we are basically siloed, and we're basically
self-selecting. We're
compartmentalized. And the perfect way to see it is if you look at the nature. Remember, we had all these states that were basically, whatchamacallit? They were what do they call them?
Swing states.
Swing states, right? The states that were kind of like in play, right?
Right.
I saw a very interesting thing while we're doing our episodes on, I can't remember where I saw it, but it was basically showed a visual of swing states over the decades.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they've moved around. It used to be Florida.
Way back, it used to be that the number of swing states. See, if you look at it through the filter of recent history, it may seem like the swing states are always the same.
Oh no,
they've moved. Most of them are repetitive, right?
Yeah, they've changed.
But it's not true. They change.
In 2000, okay. Florida was the swing state. Florida was the swing state.
Okay, but here's what's interesting. It wasn't about the fact that the states change. What was interesting in this is that the number of states that are swing states has shrunk.
Yeah.
Okay? Before, it used to be we had such a diversity of people across different states that any state or most states could switch, could go one way or the other, because there was so much diversity within that state. Okay? now the number of states that actually are up for grabs or potentially can be, can go one way or the other are much fewer. What does that tell you? That tells you that everybody is isolated in their own silo in the different states or in the different urban centers or in the different metropolitans, right? So we are not diverse groups within groups. And
but ethnically,
sadly, that's the way it is. But I can't even be, honestly, I can't even be emotional about it one way or the other, because the true cost that we are going to pay for is if everybody is motivated by that self-interest, if everybody is motivated in what's in it for me,
fear and
right?
greed.
And honestly, I feel very emboldened and empowered to basically take that position. What's in it for me? Why should I go that extra step? Right? And to your point, sounds like the 80s. Sounds like that party that we had in the 80s and then we paid for in the 90s.
I think this one's worse, but I'll say this.
No, it's only worse. It's only worse because you're older, man.
So
we,
let me
don't tend to be as resilient
let me
as we
make
get
my
older.
2 points here. You've made your points. Let me make at least 2 points here. One, I'm disappointed and surprised again by the turnout of women. For the second time in a row, the Democrats have put up a female presidential candidate, and women did not support her. The majority
Yeah,
of
but
women vote. No, and let me finish now, because when other groups, other tribes have tried to break through barriers, I remember when John F. Kennedy, the first Catholic, when that was considered taboo, could never happen, ran. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, you voted for Kennedy. If you're a Catholic, same thing if you're African American. Everybody, 99% of African Americans voted for Obama. When women have had a choice, I thought they would go in the booth and say, "This one, it's time to break a barrier. It's time to break through. It's time to break the mold." Didn't again, and that makes me question the ceiling. This isn't the first time this happened. We've had a number of races over the last couple of years where prominent Democrats, women candidates lost. I'm wondering if there still is a ceiling. Trump ran a completely bro campaign. Everybody on stage was a guy. Joe Rogan. Everybody was like that. And he never featured women in his campaigns or his ads or his rallies or anything. And the language was tough and macho and everything. And it came down to men versus women. And men came out on top again here. I wonder if that says, as a society, how far we've come or how far we have to go.
Now you understand why I pride myself on having registered as a Republican.
Right.
When I got my selective service and became a citizen, and it was Reagan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And I voted for Reagan. And I remember, as I saw the disintegration of that party, where the name meant nothing anymore as far as the party goes, that I became a non-party preference. And I've been such almost 30 years. And now you understand why. Because for me, it's the issue and the person. Now, to be fair, even when they did it, the anointment of Hillary Clinton as the de facto person to run for the presidency, and then go with, it was almost like, okay, fine, you stepped away and let Obama do it, which was a surprise to the Democratic Party, and now it's your turn. I thought that was the biggest mistake on the planet, and I did not see that person basically being able, and women are going to hate me for this, but I didn't see her as basically being able to do the job, because she had a lot of different things coming up, and I'm not talking about the gender situation. There was either polarization or whatever, and you can't have somebody who's in that position.
People didn't like her from her entry into politics. She's always been irritated people.
Call it a product sales situation, right? She just didn't have it wasn't the right selection, and I voted for Bernie Sanders at the time.
Yeah, I remember you did.
Okay, this time here, and by the way, Trump got in, and he basically then and then basically we had the first 4 years, right? And I told you at the time, I said the election after Trump constantly keeping us up every day, where I woke up in the morning
Oh,
and could not I'm like, what is the next, what is the thing that's
chaos,
going to keep coming today?
controversy,
What is
confusion.
the headline? What is the,
And it
like,
was always
I
Trump
got
every day,
tired of, right, but you live in an attention, we live in an attention economy. So he
right?
basically was constantly feeding stuff on a daily basis that
Right.
was disruptive, uncertain. I didn't know whether they're coming or going or whatever. And I said to you, I said, this election coming up in 2020 was going to be a vote for Trump or an anti-Trump vote. It was never a pro-Biden vote.
No.
In fact, Biden's appeal, if anything, was that he was boring, because we just went through 40 years of anything but boring
Right.
and volatile,
I
right?
agree. I completely agree.
Now,
One of your local candidates said that kid that was running in Newport Beach, let's make politics boring again. And we both
right,
laughed and
but
said, wouldn't it be wonderful if it was?
so hold on a second. Well, but unfortunately, that's not the world we live in, and it's
No.
not the world that America has ever been. It's always been an us against them, cowboys against Indians or Native Americans, wrestling, the Iron Sheik against Hulk Hogan. Okay, the us against them, the Rocky against Draco, the Russian. You know, I mean,
Well,
and then switching.
I'll disagree. It hasn't always been. Usually politicians try
When
to,
was it not, Paul? When was it not?
Reagan, politicians generally made it appeal to what Lincoln called our better angels, or to come together to our better selves. Reagan's A Morning in America, Obama's Hope and Change. There was an attempt made to do this. What's been different about this current president is, as John Kelly and some of the other people who worked around him said, he doesn't even attempt. He doesn't even attempt. He portrays this dark dystopia, this American carnage,
and there will be a price. There will be a price that we will pay. Okay, whether it's on the national or international scene, for abandoning
hope and change.
no, not even hope and change, abandoning civility.
Well, yeah, clearly.
Okay, it's not hope and change. It's very basic civility, right? And I go back to human nature, right? If everybody feels that they don't have to be civil, and they can get away with it without a price to pay, fine. But when I walk into a restaurant and you're the soup Nazi and you won't give me soup, guess what? On Seinfeld, I might watch that episode again. In real life, I won't come into your restaurant. So the lack of civility is going to come back and bite people at some point.
During COVID, my wife was walking into Target with a mask on in Laguna Niguel.
Yeah.
A young man came up to her in his 30s and started screaming at her, "Take that mask off, lady. We don't wear masks around here." And his 6-year-old daughter starts doing it. "Yeah, lady, that's stupid." My wife was so shook up, she came home. She's like, "Oh my God, they're screaming at me for wearing a mask." And what planet would you let your 6-year-old yell at a senior citizen and a woman?
Well, that guy was shopping at Target. They didn't own Target, so there was no cost to them. There was no cost to them to being uncivil, Paul.
But that's the world we live in. That wasn't the world I grew up in. That I grew up in a world where you don't brag, bully, cheat, lie, steal. That was the thing. And now my relatives embrace somebody who embodies all that.
Why did you grow up in a world that basically tried to implement those things? Was it just because it was a nice thing to do, or was it because people understood that there was a cost that comes if you don't do that?
Absolutely. The world doesn't function if we're all at each other's throats.
So there is a cost that's going to come
Big
from
one.
not being civil.
Big one.
We already are paying a price for it. We're already paying a price for it, because the last time I looked, unless you are an island on yourself and basically don't need anything from anybody else, all right, you can act that way. Right now, what's happening is people still need things from each other, but they're doing it in a siloed community.
Absolutely. We're self-selecting. I never grew up in an America, even California we had Reagan, we had Schwarzenegger, we had other Republican governors through the years. We never lived in a complete society where it was 100% one party, or in Texas, 100% the other party, or in Florida, 100% the other party. I never saw that kind of America other than the segregated South that I saw as a kid, where it was
Paul.
it was Democrat in those days, but it was 100%, one party. That
And what
doesn't
happened to and what happened to the segregated South economically over a drawn out period of time?
still doesn't do
They
well.
had to they had to change.
Well, it still doesn't do well down there. It's still the poorest parts of the country in Mississippi and
Right, right. So
Alabama and
there's a
whatnot.
price. There's a price to pay. And here's the thing. All right. If you want to take on, and we'll bring it back to local, right? Because you
Yeah,
and I have
right.
always said local.
All
We use
politics
it
is local.
really,
That's
all
what
politics
Tip
is
O'Neill
local,
used to
right?
say, right?
Right. Because I think we get
But you're
we
seeing
get
something positive.
hold on a second. Hold on. Okay. I know you're upset, but this is not about what this show is about. This show
I
is
know.
basically about what we learned from basically interviewing these people. And what I learned is this: you have a choice. You have a choice of basically trying to solve your situation in a siloed environment. Okay, and let me finish because this is relevant to California and relevant to Orange County. But you can either try to solve your issues in a siloed environment where every city, every entity, every department tries to solve their problems themselves, in which case these overwhelming problems that are jargonauts in their nature will probably end up being where you're kicking the can down the road, avoiding it, getting frustrated, or proposing things that are not long-lasting and sustainable. Or you start looking at regional solutions because that's the only way you're going to basically come up with something
I don't
that not
disagree.
only are you dealing with and benefiting from, but also you are sending as a legacy and an inheritance to your kids or whoever in your community is coming after you. Because if you don't do that, then it becomes their problems. And if you want to be selfish about the fact that I don't care as long as I don't have to deal with it, fine, then that's your choice.
I,
But if you don't deal, hold on, Paul, but if you don't deal with these issues in a regional manner and you try to solve them in a siloed environment, it's going to get costly. Okay, you're at the very least, you're going to basically be repetitively doing things that eventually will not work. And to be honest, you're in California, you're in Orange County. Let's not lose ourselves in the national mayhem and basically forget that where we live is where we need the solutions. It doesn't matter, right? If you're waiting for Washington, whether it's under Trump or under Harris or under Biden or under Obama or under whoever, to solve your problems that you're dealing with locally, good luck with that. You're not paying attention. That was never the case. You got to count on yourself to solve your issues. If you can't reach out in Costa Mesa, if you can't reach out to Newport Beach, to other cities, if you're in Anaheim, you can't reach out to Garden Grove, Stanton, whatever, to come up with a solution that at the very least regionally is sustainable, then good luck to you because that's not the case.
I got it, and I don't disagree with that. But here's where I will disagree with, I think, where you're going. When we talk to all these candidates, a lot of them express that hope and desire to reach across the aisle and to cooperate. Those are the candidates that lost. And I'm not going to go through and pick them out, but the candidates that won, a number of them,
Not all of them, Paul. No,
I didn't say all of them.
disagree.
I don't see a happy cooperative tone because, again, as I said at the beginning, politics has been nationalized, even at a local level.
By the way, you're trying to connect the dots that they lost because they were trying to find compromise.
Oh, no,
That's not the case.
I didn't say that.
They
Well,
lost.
maybe.
They lost for a whole multitude of reasons. They lost because it was the
So,
first time running.
so
they
do
didn't
you
have name
feel
recognition.
confident that at a local level we're going to be more cooperative this
We
coming
have
cycle?
no other choice. We have no other choice.
Yeah,
The alternative is we don't have solutions.
I don't think we
And
will have solutions.
the only question that anybody needs to basically ask, and it's going to be interesting because whereas you have the ability, like I said, to be an us and them, to be the Iron Sheik versus Hulk Hogan, to be the Indians or the Cowboys, right?
Right.
If and I don't be politically correct, but I don't care. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right, the
The
two
us and
sides,
them.
right.
If you
The black
if you wanna
hats and
do
the
it
white
us-
hats, right? The
Right,
good
but
guys and the bad
here's
guys.
the thing. Here's the thing. You can't blame the them when you are basically in control of everything.
Well, the Republicans are going to be in control of everything for the next 2 years. Absolutely.
So you don't have a them.
Here's another thing that I heard over and over again at the local level that gave me hope and that was crushed last night. At a local level, let me finish this because you're going to disagree with me on this. At a local level, what surprised both of us is how the candidates, particularly the new candidates running in these new districted cities, all said people responded warmly to the fact that they were walking the neighborhood. And for years, when they had traditional politicians there, nobody walked the neighborhood. Nobody ever rang the doorbell. So we thought, what a breath of fresh air. They're getting out because these districts are smaller. They can get out and talk to people, new people running. Yet, as they did the analysis last night on CNN and a couple other things about the results, one of the things struck me was Trump and Harris had two totally different approaches to outreach. Harris's whole shtick was they had a huge ground game. They knocked on 1 million doors, and
Yep.
Trump didn't. Trump purposely did not. He sent tweets and he sent text messages. I was inundated with text messages from Republican candidates yesterday. I got none from Democratic candidates.
Yep.
And the point of the story is maybe that old style politicking that we longed for, that we liked when we heard that, does not effective. What's effective is the angry mailer, the angry message, the angry tweet,
yes,
because that worked.
No.
The walking
Paul,
the districts did not pull out the people.
See, but you're part of the problem here.
I'm not part of the problem. That's a fact.
You are part of the problem. You're choosing to filter things through your filter. Yes, you are.
I'm not at
Because
all.
what you-
I'm
what-
pointing
what-
out that
what-
people who walked the districts did not do better than those who didn't.
What you missed out of that whole thing wasn't the fact that people walked the district. What you missed out of that whole thing was that the fact people that they connected with were hungry for that connection, but you're hoping
But
that
it didn't work.
because they connected with them. Hold on a second. You connected with them one election cycle, that they are now converts to your way. Okay, what you need to do is connect with them when you don't have something to gain, because
clearly
that person
true, right.
that you connected with, okay, looks at you and go, okay, great, terrific. You want something from me right now, so you connected with me. Great, I'm glad that somebody knocked on my door. But are you going to be there tomorrow? Are you going to continue to knock on my door and build a relationship?
So
because you
I
can't,
get it.
relationships take time to build.
But one
You're
of the
doing
things
it
you
just for the
said, and
purpose
I
of-
wanted to agree with, is how angry we were with the angry mailers. Aren't we over it? Apparently not. The angry mailers work. They still worked this cycle. Anger won out.
I can only speak for
Not for
myself.
you, but for the
Yeah.
fact is, look who the angriest candidates were. We could go down the local level and the state level and the national level. The
not
ones that
about
were
the
the
anger.
angriest.
It's
And
not about the okay. You see, the same way that you're angry about the fact that people didn't hear you,
I
other people were
No.
angry that they were not being heard as well.
Well, clearly, but you're missing my point. Is that you were trying? We both felt this showed a positive sign for the community of cooperation, of regional solutions, of walking the districts and getting to know people for the first time in a while, and that didn't work.
Why is it the first time in a while? Is what you should be asking yourself.
I don't think anybody's going to try it again. It didn't
Did
work.
You forget the fact that the other side, if we want to talk about the national level, that the other side, that basically Trump and the Trump campaign in one form or the other has been in people's living room, in people's faces, building a relationship with them for almost 10 years.
Anger, based on anger. So, but
Doesn't matter.
I
Doesn't
see
matter.
I see a dark future for American politics. You're trying to portray a positive, based on the people we talked to. It seemed to be positive.
I'm not trying to portray a positive or negative. I'm trying to be very pragmatic, and the pragmatic nature of it is this: every regional, city, national people get the government they deserve.
That's what they always say. And I guess I'll say this. Claire McCaskill said something last night on Morning Joe this morning, and I thought it rang so true. I don't know this country as well as I thought I did. I don't know the people back in these states and these other cities. I understand Californians, I thought, but Trump and the anger and the fear mongers that embrace that approach on a local level, on a state level, on a federal level, seem to be much more in tune with where the public is.
If you want to look at a positive in this, there's two. One, the system of government that we pride ourselves on. Forget about the outcome, right?
Right. No.
The system of government that we pride ourselves on is one where its representation, people are represented. They're representatives. The people that are elected are representatives of the people, right?
Right.
Okay. Now the people that are elected to represent the people are elected by a vote of the majority of people.
Yeah.
So you have a certain perspective. You would like to be represented by somebody who reflects those values.
Hmm.
And in the current moment in time, the snapshot of American history, which when it compares to other countries is but a blimp, right? The representation of the majority of the people is represented by the government that is elected. So if you want to look at it pragmatically, the system worked. The majority of people said X, and that is who is representing us. Whether you agree with that person who's representing or not, they are a reflection, unless there's some shenanigans going on. They're a reflection of the
No,
majority voice.
I think the majority of people. I'm out of sync with the majority of people. But
And you can say that the majority of people in certain states are in sync with other majority people that are in other states, because now we are all silent. The bottom line is this,
yeah,
Paul. If any solutions, which again, I don't care if it's black or white, that, or red and blue. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, I'm just looking at it that way. If we got a problem and need to solve it, it doesn't matter if it's got a blue label on it or a red label on it. The thing is, does the problem get solved or not? Ideally, if it's solved, can it basically be a sustainable solution? So we don't have to capital reinvest energy, resources, time
we're all
into it.
for
So we
that.
have to refix it over and over and over.
So do you
And
think
if it's
that's
not,
do
then
you
it's
think
not.
that's what's going to happen at the local, state, or federal level? That we're
No, of
going
course
to
not,
put
because there's
aside and we're going to find cooperative ways, pragmatic ways. Let's just look at it, see if it works. Who cares what label it has on it? Let's cooperate across different tribes. Let's work together
all
regionally.
unintended consequences happen when you don't proactively deal with something. Unintended consequences can take all shapes and sizes, right? And what I'm saying to you is this: those who are smart will basically probably try to solve some things in a manner so that they don't have to come back and try to solve them again. Because even if you're a career politician and all you're doing is basically running for office, and then the minute you're in the seat, all you can think of is staying in office.
Right.
You have a problem today that you don't solve during your first term of being in office, let's say, or the current term that you're in office. You're going to have to face it later, right? Now, there are people that don't want to solve a problem
Right. They just want to keep the
because then
problem
they can
going.
run on it.
Right.
Yeah, but that's like business, dude. That's like depreciate products that depreciate. If every car you bought did not require regular maintenance, if it wasn't built so that it would depreciate and decline, then what you would have is no need for mechanics. So there's a certain built-in aspect in the system that basically says we need to have attrition, otherwise we have no continuing purpose. So there are people that will run on that. They're motivated to operate that way. And then there are others that want to at least do something to move the thing forward a little bit. It doesn't matter. The universal law says unintended consequences will happen depending on what you choose to do. But let's not forget that 4 years ago, we were basically talking about how the system did not work. Okay? But some people said that. The system did not work. The rails of government did not hold. We went through this whole mess in January. God knows what's going to happen now. Well, look what happened now. You have a peaceful transition of power, not necessarily to the people that you want, maybe.
Had
Not
it
your-
been
your-
had it
not
been
your-
different
not your
though,
team.
had the results come out different,
Doesn't
I don't
matter.
think we
Doesn't
wouldn't
matter.
have had a peaceful
Coulda,
transfer
shoulda,
of
coulda,
power.
shoulda, woulda.
This is
Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
this is baloney.
shoulda, woulda, Paul.
You have. I really don't think the system held. I think the system is about to crack, big time, badly.
So what's the difference? What's the difference between you finding fault in the system now and the people who found fault in the system in 2020?
Because you can't tell me that had the other side lost, we wouldn't have violence, and there won't be violence this time.
That's what
We're not
that's
we're
what
not
that's-
going to impose violence on them because we lost, but they would have, and they
Paul,
still will.
coulda, woulda, shoulda.
You're saying that both sides are the same, and who cares? And so we're just going through a greedy period now, and everybody's out for themselves.
What is the grievance done to us other than basically take it down an even worse road in 4 years?
I
Nothing.
I don't believe, honestly, that this country and its democratic system are going to survive. One, I don't think the man who's won office will leave, even though he's supposed to. I don't think he will. Two, I think you're going to see less freedom of the press, less freedom of speech, and three, and less freedom across the board. And three, they're going to do everything it can to
There
make
hasn't been, by the
to
way,
make a
Paul,
minority of people rule over this country for a continuing period of time.
and part of those people that rule over the country, to be honest with you, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC or what, or newspapers, they're a business. They basically are a marketed product to a certain target market. The freedom of the press that you're talking about, that nostalgia that you're talking about, I understand, and I hear where you're coming from. But the reality of our lives, and I go back to the thing, the people get the government they deserve. What I'm choosing to focus on is this. I may differ on certain people's thinking, and it's easier maybe for me as a registered non-party preference to be able to see it that way because I don't have allegiance or loyalty.
Right. You don't have a dog in the race, right?
I don't. Okay. And it's very freeing, to be honest with you. And I think the more people that do that, the more it's going to become difficult to, regardless what cult or silo or tribe you belong to continue to carry favor, because there are more of us over the last 10 years than in terms of growth spike in the non-party side, which is the whole range. Extreme liberal, extreme on each side, doesn't matter, and a whole bunch of people in the middle.
I can't wait for the day when that non-party preference finally speaks up and does something, instead of either sitting back and not participating or just swaying at the last minute one way or another.
Who said we're not participating, Paul?
Well, there's no third party being formed. There's no
because the system is rigged on both sides.
Well, so then what? So then how are they participating? I think this so-called non-party preference is either.
Well, if anything is clear, you no longer have a Republican and Democratic Party. You have a Democratic Party or a Democrats. I don't even want to say Democratic per se, because sometimes that word gets confusing, right? But you have a Democrat Party and you have a Trump Party. It's not a Republican and Democrat situation. So what does that tell you? That tells you that parties can change, names can change, things can have not a label that you're familiar with and still basically be effective. Perfect example, look at what happened with the popular vote yesterday. What I choose to focus on today is this. You may disagree and not like the results, but the system of government is based on the fact that people vote. We had that very high turnout.
Mm-hmm.
And you had people who voted for what they believe to be the form of government they want. Now they may be misguided. They may find out later that they were at a party and now they woke up and somebody showed up with a bill that they didn't expect they have to pay for, or maybe not, or somewhere in between. But the system works where people vote, the votes are added, the government is formed by the representation of the people by how they exhibited that during their vote. So the system worked.
I think that in 4 years, talk to me in 4 years, because my prediction is the system will not be the same in 4 years. We will.
Well, the system is never always. It's never always the
same. But you know what I'm saying. We're not going to. We're just going to have this. The current candidate is going to stay in office, whether he's voted in office or not. We are moving towards an authoritarian state that is not based on democracy. That's not based on the will of the people.
Welcome to every country in the world that had to go through growing pains.
We never did that. In 200 years never did that.
We used to think we were more unique than the rest of the planet.
Exceptional was the word. One of a kind.
Guess what? When you stop being civil, you stop being exceptional. You start basically being self-entitled, self-think. I mean, my point is, but let's look at something else.
You said that for years, and it strikes me hard. I agree with you. This is a hard comeuppance for America, because if my fear is true, and we somehow devolve into some sort of authoritarian state, like Putin's Russia, like Erdogan's Turkey, like Orban's Hungary, where freedoms of press and freedom of assembly and all this stuff starts to get curtailed and cut back and whatnot, and you end up with a one-party dictatorship of some sort, either a complete dictatorship or a quasi-dictatorship. That's not what America was built for. That's not what we believed we were about. And I thought it was impossible in this country. I now believe it's probable.
Did the system work, Paul?
Today, yes. Tomorrow, I think there will be no system.
Yeah, but nobody knows what tomorrow is. The only constant is change.
All I know is you've got a guy in there who says he's going to use the military against the enemy within. He's going to revoke press licenses and
Right,
restrict press freedoms. He's going to
right.
pull out 10 million people
And
by
what happened?
force and
What
kick them
happened?
out.
What? Okay, and the other side of your thinking says, no, that's just all bullshit and baloney, right? Now, if let's just talk about this, like just hyper.
I hope it is bullshit and baloney.
Well,
'Cause,
hold on a second, hold on.
but that's what
You
he
and I have
says
been
he's going to
around.
do. And the
You
people
and
down to the local
we
level all support him and all say the same thing. That 9/11, that January 6th was state. We had candidates in here who came that said that, who are now in public office in this county, who said January 6th was
Paul,
staged by the FBI.
how many times, again, we go back to the whole purpose of doing this show and interviewing people that are running for office, right? Because nobody can really tell a person and get a sense of a person
Right.
when it's a 1 minute question
I
and a
agree.
30-second answer, right? But if you sit down and talk to somebody for an hour and not the sound bites and what they basically said to get attention and get the coverage, right? You get a bit more sense. Now, I'm not saying that he's not going to do that. What I'm saying is this, okay? Every person that we have interviewed, every person that we have encountered in our lives that has run for office or basically even applied for a job, okay, says things when they're running, then when they get into office, they are saddled with certain regulations. Now, the regulations could hold or they may not hold, okay? But their actions, perfect case is what we're dealing with at the supervisor level right now, where somebody had to resign from the supervisors
Yeah.
because of a scandal,
Right.
right? So there is consequences to actions. So should they basically take an action that most of the country that voted for them believed that they were not going to do? If they took that action, there will be consequences when that action is taken. And there's no way you or I today can anticipate what that reaction is going to be. Okay, they had a huge Latino basically voting situation that
Yeah.
happened, right?
Right.
Which is wonderful. I choose to look at it as being a minority that is in the United States that is basically gaining political influence and actually is feeling more engaged and active in the process. The results, agree or disagree with them, those facts are not deniable. That's what happened, right? So if we all of a sudden start having mass deportation, will that group of people be impacted in a way that they anticipated or did not anticipate? There's no way of knowing until it happens, right? And there will be consequences and costs and to pay when something like that happens to a whole broad range of people, if it happens. So I'm choosing today to look at a couple of things that we learned. Positive, negative, take it the way you want, right? In order for us to have sustainable solutions, it is super clear that we cannot solve these problems in our siloed thinking.
But
We have to do them.
your opinion. That is not the opinion of the majority of people who feel exactly that any compromise with somebody else, any discussion with somebody else is wrong. They're going to impose their views on you and others. This is not going to be a discussion. This is going to be a one-sided imposition.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate, Paul, and then we're
Yeah.
going to wrap it up because I
Yeah.
got to go.
Right.
But the devil's advocate in me says, how's that any different from what you would base the other side could say you're imposing on them? We don't know what the future holds. All we know is that change is inevitable.
Yeah.
And that there's always consequences to actions.
Right.
And I choose to focus today on the fact that we don't have a rebellion at the Capitol steps, and the fact that people showed
We
up,
did the last time.
they showed up in mass, historical mass.
Right.
They voted and expressed their opinion, and based on their votes, we have what we have.
Right.
And in that way,
I'm not,
government, the system worked.
I hope.
Let's leave it at that.
All right.
Wish everybody good luck, regardless whether your candidates won or lost. Thanks for participating and voting. That is one of the things that makes this country different. Half of the world does not have that ability to do that. So I'll talk to you guys next week. Stay safe and stay calm.
Yeah, stay calm.
Thanks, Paul.